Could you please talk about Augusto Pinochet, the late Chilean dictator? I'm a fan of Francisco Franco and would like to know your opinion on Pinochet's regime in Chile.
Well, first things first. As we know, he came to power through overthrowing his predecessor, who was a man whose name was. I can't believe it. It's gone right out of my head. I don't remember his. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry about this. I knew it like the back of my head. I remember watching the television while it was going on in 1973. But his predecessor, whose name I can't remember, was a communist. Now, his election was not what led the army to overthrow him. What led the army to overthrow him was his beginning to create Allende, Salvador Allende. That was
Yeah,
it.
there we go.
He was beginning to recruit a people's militia that would have replaced the army and have ensured that the Communist Party, which in those days, remember, ladies and gentlemen, this was before the fall of the Soviet Union. People forget, and they're certainly not going to be reminded in school the way they are the Nazis. People forget what the communists would actually do to countries they got their hands on. The countries didn't do very well. Now, living where I am right now in Austria, tomorrow I'm going to go to Budapest for the weekend. I get my snout filled a lot with what communism was really like. I think one of the reasons why the Western Europeans and the Americans consider the Central Europeans so retrograde is because the Central Europeans had their faces smacked into reality real hard in a way that Western Europeans haven't had since World War II, and Americans haven't had probably since the Civil War, maybe the Depression. That was the last time we really came face to face with reality. But anyway, Allende was not happy with the notion that Chile would go the way of Poland, Czechoslovakia, etc. And the Soviets, who already had their foothold in Cuba and were just looking forward to Chile as an added feast. So what did Pinochet do? To prevent Chile from going that way, he overthrew the government and he put himself in charge. Now, it's an interesting thing about that. What does Catholic teaching on revolution teach us? When is a revolt justified? Well, several times, several things have to be required. Firstly, there has to be a clear danger to the Catholic faith.
What are you citing from?
A specific document I can't pull out of my head, but this is
A papal document.
Yeah, but it's consensus.
Okay.
I'll in our next episode.
I just wanted to make. I was just curious whether it's papal or whether it was Aquinas.
A mixture of the two, probably.
Okay.
But I'm so used to repeating this that I couldn't give you an exact background.
Okay.
It's certainly repeated often enough. The first is that the Catholic faith be actually threatened. In a communist takeover, yes, there's always an explicit threat to the Catholic faith. Always. Communism is atheism. There's no question about that. So, the second, would doing nothing result in something worse than revolting would? This is a very good question. Because, as you know, revolutions are generally accompanied by all sorts of upset. I mean, national life gets paralyzed to a greater or lesser degree. Certainly blood is shed. So you mustn't revolt unless you're pretty sure that the alternative would be worse than what you're going to go through as a result of the revolt. Thirdly, you've got to have a pretty good chance of winning. If you don't think you've got a good shot at it, don't do it. In other words, lives should not be lost in a dramatic gesture. So, how does this apply to what faced Pinochet? Was the faith directly threatened? Oh, yeah. Would doing nothing end with worse results than taking action? Oh, yeah. Did they have a good chance of winning? Yes, but not if they waited until the popular militia was formed and armed.
Yeah.
So,
Good idea.
yeah, time to move on this one. So they did. And were they very nice to their opponents? No. Would their opponents have been nice to them had they succeeded in communizing Chile? No. Civil wars are always the worst kind of war. Now, if you don't believe me, look at ours. And so,
Which one?
well, actually, either one, either the first Civil War or the second,
Okay.
either the war with the crown or the war between the states. But fortunately, because Allende moved, not Allende, because Pinochet moved when he did, he moved quickly. He was able to minimize the amount of upset that occurred to the body politic. Did everything he do, was everything he did nice? No. It never is, and that's sort of a setup. But he saved Chile from becoming a communist country. His economic policies did the country a lot of good. And as far as his dealing with the opposition and ending democracy during his period, I think that has to be seen in the greater context. I mean, was Franco's Spain worse than modern Spain? Well, if we're talking about body count, no. Since far more infants are killed every year in Spain than political opponents were killed by Franco. That's if body count means anything. And the same was true under Allende. There was no abortion in Chile. There is now. So you have to measure all these things into it. See, we have very tender sensibilities about life. We get very upset, for instance, when puppies drown. It's even worse if a person drowns them. But we don't mind infants being slaughtered. Now, I kind of think that if you apply that to our entire point of view, we're a little twisted. Now, that doesn't mean our opinions aren't strong. They are. They're very strong. Our points of view are very, very powerful to us. Very, as my brother would say, they're very real to us. But being real to us doesn't mean they're objectively true. It just means they're very real to us. Obviously, the further removed from objective reality they may be, well, anyway, that's a whole other issue. The point I'm making is that in terms of what he had to deal with and where it was and so on and so forth, I think Pinochet was justified. I think that Chile owes him a lot, just as Spain owes Franco a lot. And I think that the punishment that was meted out to Pinochet as an old man was completely unjust, even as I think the attempts to drag out Franco's body now are unspeakable. I think the Prime Minister of Spain is unspeakable. And, I hope may he receive what he wants to give.
Okay, so Francisco Franco was a fascist, right?
Was what?
Fascist?
I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, you were saying?
I know you heard me.
What did you say?
The Austro-fascist sympathies are coming out, guns blazing over here.
I heard Austro sympathies. See, I've decided to excise from my mind a meaningless word. I'm not using it anymore.
You know what that's reminiscent of? That's reminiscent of the young Pope, where he banished, what is the word, tolerance?
Yep.
Or I forgot. I think so. Yeah. You deleted it.
Yep. It's deleted. Fascism is no longer welcome here. Been there, done that.
Wow.
It's if you want to examine a regime, then you have to look at it. You don't get to knock it off with the F word.
Ooh.
You have to examine it. You can say what you like about it, what you don't like about it. What you don't get to do is dismiss it with the F word.
That sounds good. I like that.
There's only one exception I make for that, and that's for governments to call themselves fascist.
Oh yeah.
Fine to call Italy fascist.
Yeah.
But see, then the same thing happens. What do you like or dislike about Italian fascism? That's,
Okay.